Once you start, listening to a lot of podcasts and things like that, then you realize like, man, charging 75 an hour is nothing, compared to what you should be or need to be charging if you want to be successful. That's the main thing with pretty much any of these things, is that as soon as that lead comes across your desk, you have to answer it like fast, like within 5 minutes. Well, the easiest way to do it is just not do hourly. That's the first thing. What I do is I just basically make block pricing. So half day, full day. When I look at a project, that's how I cost it out. And then kind of same thing with my buddy telling me to get my contractor license. I really felt like God was like kind of pushing that in my direction. Like, hey, like this is what you're supposed to be doing.
All right, welcome to episode 11 of Expanding Local. Today I am here with Greg Schmitt. 10 years ago, he did not even know how to use a screw gun, and he was an accountant. He served tables. He built event experiences before COVID, while also doing Instacart during COVID. And then also during COVID, he started his handyman business in San Diego. And now he is the owner of the successful Huge Handyman of San Diego. Greg Schmitt, thank you so much for being my 11th guest.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Perfect. So to get started, I kind of want to get the idea of how you even got started in handyman in particular. It's definitely, one of the home services that's up there, very competitive. What made you decide to do that as opposed to a more specialized trade?
I really started the handyman thing just because I didn't know any different. I was building the event experiences, which essentially involved running a crew, operating heavy equipment, constructing things, building furniture, hanging things, making experiences for people to walk into. And then when all that went by the wayside, when the whole COVID madness started, I didn't really know what to do other than just kind of odd job type things. So I had a friend of mine who was asking, "Hey, do you know any handyman in San Diego?" And I was thinking, "Oh, pretty much I am, I guess. I have my toolkit and I know how to do a good handful of things." So I really just started out of necessity. I didn't know where it would lead or anything like that, but one thing I did know was how to show up on time and do what you say you're going to do. So that basically, kind of snowballed into where we are now, where we're more of like we do small to medium sized jobs, and medium being like up to a bathroom remodel. And we have co-workers of mine that are specialized in certain things. So it kind of just went out of necessity, and then you could see a niche, or see an opportunity to really meet a need in the market. Because as far as handymen go, most handymen are pretty unreliable. They're jack of all trades. They're so busy. It's hard to work and also take in calls and get back to people. So I totally get it. You want to go on vacation, you want to live your life. So it's hard to get that started, or if you're just doing it by yourself. So naturally, that kind of profession is going to have these glitches just associated with it. So just coming from the background I had with the experiential marketing, where we had early call times and we were responsible for like $1 million projects, I was just used to that kind of like work ethic and level of follow up and communication with people. And then I just noticed that was that people really like that. So it wasn't, I think most people that would talk to you about like running having a business, they would say, "Oh, you probably want to be a little bit more specialized," which is, a challenge in and of itself. So, kind of doing a lot of things is pretty hard. And so I'm sure that's why there's not a lot of handyman companies out there like HVAC, heating, electrical. There's $100 million companies in that. There's no $100 million handyman companies, and that's
Yeah.
probably why. So.
Perfect. So you kind of mentioned that this happened out of necessity. However, I feel like going from the employee to employer slash business owner slash entrepreneur mindset, which you definitely have, how did that come about, and what made you decide to take that leap?
Well, my friend who actually was the first one that asked me to be a handyman, he was asking me about getting my license, and it kind of seemed like this unattainable feat. I wasn't raised in construction, and I didn't really see myself as a contractor, so the being a business owner really came once I realized like, hey, to have your contractor license, you can really choose two paths. You can do it all yourself and then probably experience a lot of the same issues that handyman would have, except for the fact that you now have to pay a lot of money of insurance and California license stuff. Or you could try and buy back your time essentially and hire better people that can do a better job than you. And that's really where that mindset switch happened, was just realizing that I didn't want to be that old beat up contractor guy that has no time for his family and can't rub two nickels together, can't seem to charge enough or get ahead like that like I just didn't want to do that. So that's where that came from.
Perfect. And how did you, like, I've seen your online presence, like you're doing well, and I assume business is going well. How did you build that momentum? Because I feel like the first, you know, 50, 100 jobs are like the hardest, and then things just kind of keep multiplying and you build momentum. How did you start?
Well, I started with word of mouth, and I a lot of this was kind of like God opening doors for me and me just walking through them. So I started word of mouth, and I was doing Instacart, and I didn't have a lot of handyman jobs. I would just kind of take it day by day. In COVID, in the early days of COVID, you you just take it day by day. So you're like, okay, today I have a handyman job, so I don't have to go get groceries for people, today, which is that in of itself was like a motivating factor to get out of that as soon as possible. Like that's a hard way to make a living. But then a friend of mine told me about an app called Thumbtack, which was a way to build your reach. So what I did was I had a low hourly rate, like for someone that's doing handyman stuff. First I was charging $30 an hour, and then it was 40, and then on Thumbtack I bumped it to 50, and I did that until I had enough reviews that I felt like was justified in giving myself a raise. And then I would give myself a raise, and then you gotta listen to what the market is telling you. Like if people are head over heels excited about the service you're providing, it might be time to like up your prices a little bit. And then once you start listening to a lot of podcasts and things like that, then you realize like, man, charging 75 an hour is nothing, compared to what you should be or need to be charging if you want to be successful. So that's kind of how you start, but you have to take lumps early on, and you have to do some things that you don't want to do. As a handyman, you're going to have to say yes to a lot of stuff. Like, know your limits, obviously. I'm not saying that people should do like illegal things or whatever, but I definitely California is really strict with license laws, and there's just no way, dude, that you're gonna try and make a living with the regulations that they have. So like you have to do some stuff and be smart about what you're doing. Don't do things that you can't do, but you have to say, kind of have to say yes to a lot of stuff, and then get better, make mistakes, not be afraid to make mistakes, and then so sooner or later, if you do things right and have the right attitude, you're gonna pick up that momentum. You're gonna be able to bring people on to help you, and then the first couple people will probably not be that great, and then you'll find better people, and then just not be afraid to fail, I guess. I was really lucky early on to just be able to like work my way into it, and it was a good time with COVID because a lot of people were having work done on their house. So like you could pretty much fill up your week by only paying like $100 in like Thumbtack leads, So, but yeah, you just gotta grind to start.
So after Thumbtack, what was the next marketing step you took that kind of increased people's awareness of you?
The next marketing step really was just to double down on what was working, to be honest. So Thumbtack, I didn't even make a Google my business page until I had over 100 Thumbtack leads. So Thumbtack was working. Just keep going into what's working. It's one thing I've discovered since in small business is there's no shortage of ways to waste money in marketing. So if something is working and you're still building, I would just keep doing that, and if you're going to experiment on like a very low level. Like don't, you know, a good example of one is those guys that call you to put your ads on like crappy golf courses, like don't buy five of them, try one, and then see if that works and then go forward, don't, after that, I really started leaning into relationships and trying to drive the word of mouth and learning how to network and talk about my business. That's going to be super important for anyone starting out. So if you're getting leads from one place, like keep doing it. You can experiment with some of the other pay for lead things. Do all the free stuff. That's the thing. Like a lot of people, they get so hung up on like all these things you can pay for, but they're not doing the basics. Like people sign, you can get their email before you go there. Like 100% of people that you're going to do an appointment for would also provide you an email. So even if you don't know if you will use it or not, or you're not at the point where you're sending them contracts or whatever, like still get their email, put it somewhere, and so then you can like reach out to them again. But if you're not doing the free stuff, you shouldn't be paying for extra stuff. So I like the model of paying per specific lead is because it's easier to judge. It's not like I've never done the pay per click thing or like paying for just random Instagram ads. Haven't done that yet, but just do what works and then try things out and experiment.
Are you running local services ads?
I do. It's not very extensive. I think my budget might be maybe $500 a month. Think about I am doing some other things that are helping my Google business. I use an app called Pin Parrot, which
Oh,
like
nice.
kind of expands my reach a little bit. But I like the marketing things. I like are the like more infrastructure kind of type things that stick with you. The one thing I did learn about Thumbtack though is, I had all my ratings in Thumbtack, and after I had like 115, and I was like, Jesus, like this my Thumbtack page is super built out, but it's not Google. So then I had to start from scratch and reach out to all my friends, past customers, and start building that up. So I don't even have my Google at the level of my Thumbtack still. So but the Google LSA is good. I think it's not as good as Thumbtack, I don't think, in my experience. But also, I'm not like a Google wizard either, so I don't know.
Do you know other handymen that are using local services ads? Because I'm curious to know how that industry performs with LSA.
Well, I know that there's a couple handyman franchises in San Diego. There's one that's it's called Mr. Handyman, and those guys are basically they buy a franchise and they have to work in like specific neighborhoods. I'm sure that they go outside of that, and I'd imagine that they probably do a handful of advertising on Google LSA. There's another guy. He just works in Point Loma though, so I don't really know what his deal is. I think most of his stuff comes through Nextdoor, which is actually probably worth mentioning for people. You can find, depending on your market, you can find companies that can just send you all the Nextdoor posts, and you can just reply to those. It's more hit and miss, but the hits are like pretty good. Like we get real good jobs out of it. It's not very expensive. If you have someone that's able to answer like pretty quickly, but you have to get on it quick. That's the main thing with pretty much any of these things, is that as soon as that lead comes across your desk, you have to answer it like fast, like within 5 minutes. Otherwise, you're going to get buried with other next door responders. You're going to get, you know, even on Thumbtack, they send it to like three people. If you're like the last one, maybe they already booked it. Like that's happened to us before. So you got to be quick with it, which is hard because if you're working on your own, how are you going to answer stuff if you got your hands full?
Yeah,
So that's the challenge.
100%. what have you learned from getting all of these reviews, and what is your current process for getting as many reviews as possible?
Well, getting the reviews is easy. It's just about asking multiple times. My CRM follows up with people. If after the invoice gets sent, it'll automatically send them a link to click, and if they don't click that link, then it'll ask them again a certain amount of time later. And then my technicians also saying, telling them, because I put a little incentive for them. I give them $20 cash if they get their name on a review. And so they're a little bit more motivated to say, hey, we have this thing going at work. If you put my name in it, like that'd be super helpful to me.
Love it.
And so it's just kind of but you have to be proactive with it. When I was first starting with Thumbtack, I mean, it's not like the most glamorous thing ever to say like, hey, so I'm gonna send you the invoice. If you don't mind, can you leave me a review? It'd mean the world to me. Like, you kind of feel like I don't want to say like a beggar, but you know what I mean. Like you're
Yeah.
like, come on, can you please, leave this thing for me? But it's the fundamentals of like having a business. Like you have to get reviews, and so and every single one counts. Like we had the only non 5-star review we got on Google was some like random bot that just left us a 1-star out of nowhere. And and it sits there. It's at 100 Google reviews, all of a sudden I was 4.9 because of one stinking
It might actually help
random.
you.
Yeah, yeah. So it was but that recently they deleted a bunch of reviews off of Google, and so I think that one went away. So anyways, we're good now. But
Yeah, I think I saw you're at 5 now.
yeah,
You gotta get one negative review for a stupid
yeah.
reason to make you look legit. Um, Perfect. So went through first customers. What about sales? What have you learned? It's like I feel like you are very close to like where you were when you were like a one man, entrepreneur, um, doing handyman services. Like, what did you learn about sales? How do you go about that process?
I learned that you have to be comfortable saying numbers and sticking to them. And though you have to kind of desensitize yourself from the money aspect of things, and just you need to have a higher sense of value and know what you're bringing to the table. Because when you tell someone that a drywall patch is going to be $2,000, like it sure, yeah, it does sound like a lot for sure, but what I don't say to them is, what also sounds like a lot is my freaking workers' comp insurance, but like, so you have to, you have to be comfortable saying numbers to people and also giving them the space to react to them and not feel like you have to get defensive when you say these things to people, so there's a really great podcast called The Contractors Fight. I did their like little education program for a while, and it revolves around sales calls and how to structure your sales calls. And that formula has been really good for me. It also saves me a lot of time from driving around town, because that's the one thing that people always want. They're like, hey, can you just come over and look at it? Well, if I did that all day, I would have no time to do anything. I'd just be driving around town looking at people, and I don't even know if they're my like ideal customer yet. So like the main thing is to make sure you're pre-qualifying people before you volunteer your time, and really value your time. So our process is basically pretty much anybody. You call me for anything, I'm going to ask you for pictures, even if it's like I need 5 chairs assembled. Okay, can you send me pictures of the chairs? Can you send me the details? And then if a job is over a day, I'll hop on the phone with them, and just kind of talk them through, okay, the details. Why are they calling us? Like, how long have they been thinking about this? Have you talked to other people about this? Why is it important for you to get this done? And then we'll give them a ballpark price, or in like a drywall patch, I'd feel comfortable just giving them a price, and then seeing if they want to do it or not. So And then if they're good with that, then if a walkthrough is needed, then I'll volunteer a walkthrough, and I just let them know, like, you build trust with them, like say, hey, so I'm going to come walk through. If there's something that's different about this job than what we just talked about, is it okay if I bring it to your attention and just we talk about it? Or if like the scope is too crazy for you, I want you to be able to tell me like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready to do this, and then you ask them for, before you go, you're like, hey, I do have a site visit fee to come out and look. It's completely it's deducted from the final invoice, but just to get you on the books or whatever. And then it's like $100. So if someone's serious about doing a $2,000 project, they'll be okay spending $100. And all those things are just meant to like weed the customers that aren't for us out of the equation, so I can spend my time working with people that really value like good communication and like a quality experience.
So for handyman services in particular, I'm sure there's a lot of unique jobs, many different types of, activities, services that you provide. How do you determine pricing?
Well, the easiest way to do it is just not do hourly. That's the first thing. I probably, when we first started, we were, telling people our hourly, and then they're like, well, how long will it take? And you're like, will it take 3 hours or 6 hours or, so what I do is I just basically make block pricing. So half day, full day. And when I judge, when I look at a project, that's how I cost it out. So, half day is this, full day is this. Is it two fulls and a half, two halves of a full, and then that's what I do for the labor, and it keeps it generally pretty close. There's and then the other thing you have to do is you just have to have a lot of learning lessons, to be honest, because your contracts are going to be full of like caveats of like, hey, if I encounter this is going to change the scope. If this happens, and so you just there's no way to really get through all that without like taking those lumps. Like I can list them out for someone, but until you felt the pain of it, you probably won't think to put it in your contract. So that's kind, and then you got to give yourself buffer too, like, and you have to also so you basically come up with your what hourly rate do you need to charge, and then I basically multiply that by 4 for a half day, 8 for a full day. And you have to take into account everything. You need to take into account your overhead. You need to take into account, if you're, get, for example, like self-education, like you should have that in your like budget, which then should drill down. Now, I'm not like charging people $500 extra so I can go to a Tommy Mello convention or anything, but like over the
I would.
course of a year, they're gonna pay a fraction of that because that's a part of like being in business. So you just have to, and that number is gonna be way higher than you think it is. So that's the thing that kind of stinks, but like when it comes down to it, operating in California is expensive, and people just gotta be, they either pay it or they don't, they go to somebody else.
What have you learned about branding, and how did you come up with the name Huge Handyman? I like it.
Oh, thank you. So huge came from like an inside joke when I used to do mixed martial arts with like my instructor.
Which one?
What do you mean?
Like Muay
Huge?
Thai, Jiu Jitsu?
Oh, I did both. I competed like on a really low level, like a low professional level in MMA.
Nice.
At the time, this instructor, he was like a Shudo instructor, and he taught Kali and shoot wrestling. But then I started doing jujitsu and boxing in college. And then in my 20s, I was doing kind of like the regular MMA stuff.
Nice.
But yeah,
If
so
you
like
ever meet
huge
in
was kind
person,
of
I
like,
won't. I won't mess with
but
you.
oh yeah, no, I bruise like a peach, man. So like that's why I had to stop. But yeah, so that's where huge came from. I'm a big guy too, so like that's kind of like a part of it. But it also, I don't know, it kind of sounds good with like the two H words. And
Yeah, I like it.
my thank you. Like my old logo was actually pretty bad. I had it. It looked okay. I don't think I have it sitting around here, but it looked okay. But then I went to a Tommy Mello conference out in Orlando, and then this guy Dan Antonelli, he like looked at it and he told me everything that was wrong with it, and I didn't have 25 grand to have them go do it.
That's kick
Um,
charge, right?
yeah. So, but he spent the time with me to have a conversation about it, and I just took that knowledge. I read his book, Branded Not Blanded, and that's basically how I designed um, the logo. Now, I just took those concepts and like applied them to like my truck wraps and the logo itself, and it might change, it might not, I don't know, but it's good enough. It's kind of like the one thing he told me that I think people miss is they get too wrapped up in like all the stuff, and they like want it to be like this and that, and that. It has to be simple and legible from like long distances, and that's where my old logo was falling short, is it was too like cramped, and so you could read Handyman, but you couldn't see Huge, so it was just kind of like, you're driving past, you're like, okay, so there goes a handyman, cool, it's not memorable. So like that was huge. And then just yeah, I basically like went to like another design company that just does like truck wraps, but they'll do the design. And I was like, do you guys know what kick charge is? They're like, yeah. I go, okay, perfect. So apply those kick charge ideas to this wrap and we'll be good. So
Those are actually really good instructions.
you know,
Do what they do.
I was like, here's their website, look at their wraps, make that, please. And then, change, and they came up with some ideas and we changed it, and, who knows, in some years maybe we'll change it again, but it works for now. It looks a lot more like, you're not going to see a lot of, even the Mr. Handyman, which is like a well-known franchise, like their wraps on their trucks are like really congested and information heavy. So, it's we just tried our best. It's like I said, it might change in the future. Maybe it won't. I don't know.
Perfect. And how has faith played a role in your journey?
I keep saying it's been huge, but it's
Dude, the branding is on point.
yeah. It has been huge. I'll tell you a story. So when I went to go get my contractor license, obviously I didn't have a background in being a construction person. So, I'm studying for this test, and they tell you at the contractor school, hey, so all these questions, I'm going to give you like 2,000 questions. It'll be 250 of these 2,000 questions will end up on your exam, but it'll be verbatim. And I was like, perfect. I'm a good memorizer. I should knock this thing out of the park. And then we get into the test. The first one was the law. And the law one was like the easiest for me because I'm like, it's like common sense, right? Well, the questions were like always the opposite of like what was the, it'd be like, or is your cup supposed, you'd study, it'd be like, is your cup supposed to be a third full? And then on the actual exam, it'd be like, how much empty should this be? So everything was
Oh,
like,
that's annoying.
yeah, but it was, but you're talking about like laws and things like that. So it was really hard. So basically, I thought, I'm not a very good student. So I didn't study all that hard, but I opened that test up and I was like, wow, well, I guess I'll just fail it. And then, you can get unlimited redos and I'll do that. Passed it the first time. I was like, holy crap. And then, kind of same thing with my buddy telling me to get my contractor license. I really felt like God was like kind of pushing that in my direction, like, hey, like this is what you're supposed to be doing. And then the trades exam came up, and that was even worse. It was like asking roofing questions and like what gauge nail do you need to. I was like, dude, I have never even, none of this was even on the practice stuff. But passed that the first time. And then I was like, okay, so this is definitely like a God thing. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And pretty much anytime I get like super frustrated with how things are going, or maybe a job goes sideways or whatever, like every time there's been a way, something's happened to kind of like, God showing me like, hey, this is to teach you something. This is to grow you in this certain way. And it's a hard mindset to keep all the time. Like obviously in construction, there's going to be really tough things that come up, lose money on this or that, or over a period of time, or just a bunch of jobs go bad. There's a period of time where our Thursdays, like every single thing that could go wrong on a Thursday went wrong on a Thursday. And then but you just sit there and pray about it. And, I definitely could use work on like my prayer life, but I feel like every time I kind of get that frustrated mindset, God has a way of like kind of bringing me along, and it just kind of reminds me like, hey, this is, from Him, so this won't fail. Like He's got your back, and and you just kind of lean on that, knowing like I don't know how this is gonna pan out. How am I gonna get out of this situation? But it's you just kind of like look to Him, like, okay, I probably just need to pray a little bit more about it. Maybe I need to fast or something. Like my wife is a huge faster. When she's like, I need to get right, she like always fasts. It's a good example to follow, But it's immensely powerful to just kind of get through the rough times. So.
Yeah, it's very comforting. And like I completely agree with you, and I've definitely had similar experiences, especially in the last like couple of years, where it's just like this sucks, but I don't really, obviously I care, but at the same time I don't, because I know it's going to work out, if that makes any sense.
Oh,
Um,
totally. It gives you just it's kind of like something to lean on and just be like, okay, like, it is like you said, it's comforting. Um, it makes your skin that's like a little bit thicker. You're like, whatever, I'll just have this tough conversation or just get through this thing, and, in like a week it'll be fine. Pray about it a little bit more. God's probably like, golly, this guy just complains all the time, but but it's all good.
awesome. And you mentioned a few names earlier, Dan Antonelli, Tommy Mello, and definitely other ones. Who should people be listening to in the trades who want to, um, if they want to grow their company, do things the right way, and build?
So Tommy Mello's a good one. He's a kind of a big picture dreamer, like kind of gives you that like idea of like where things could go, or like what direction you might be looking in. I find that his some of his stuff is just a little bit too but it's good. Like you should definitely listen to Tommy Mello. The Marcus
Wait, you got to finish that thought. Some of the stuff is too what?
Oh, it's just, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's, got like a $300 million garage door business. So
Yeah,
his problems are not going to be your problems
yeah, a
starting
little
out.
out of touch. Yeah, I
Yeah,
feel that.
and it's not that he's out of touch. I just feel like his stuff is like, especially kind of like lately, he's just moved on to, other things. He sold a part of his business. So he's just at a different place.
Yeah,
So, it's good to listen to things like that because it can kind of teach you what's possible. And obviously, he has a lot of great fundamentals to get there. So I think it's really important to listen to those things. Some of them aren't going to be you're not going to be able to implement them. You're not going to be able to just hire a bunch of different things and have it work for you. And some of like their, you go to his conference, some of the vendors are great, some of them aren't great. It's kind of like everything, right? Um, a guy that I find is really helpful to listen to for the guys that are like sub a couple million, which is myself included, is Tom Reber with the Contractor Fight. I feel like I went to hit one of his conferences, and it's a lot more people like kind of like you know GC level, have a couple employees. There were some big companies there that like were attending or whatever, but that's where the sales process that I got comes from. And it's good to because I feel like it's just more fundamental type things, that's more relatable in a way. But so he's really good. Marcus Sheridan is really good. They ask you answer, that kind of concept of just being like fully transparent with your prices with people and like
just a second time I've
educating
heard that.
people.
I'm gonna have to read
Yeah,
that.
it's amazing. The and the what's that sales podcast? Waste No Day podcast is
Oh, yeah.
huge.
I just had Brian Burton on.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh man, his podcast is awesome.
Yeah, they're great.
What's his name? Joe Crisera. That's a really good one. Um, you just take one thing from all these guys and you set yourself up well.
Perfect. And what is your like big vision for Huge Handyman? Where are you trying to take things?
Well, I'm trying to take them. I don't really. I want to provide more of an opportunity for people that have this like skill set of being real good at like a couple things, and the guys that work with me, they really like this type of like varied, job atmosphere. And so I want to provide like an opportunity, like a career structure for these people, because I feel like handyman typically it's really hard to like make a good living for yourself. And I've seen a lot of like HVAC and plumbing companies be able kind of accomplish that, where they have like technicians that are earning over $100,000 a year. I think that's awesome. Like, if I want to find a way to make that work for like a handyman company where you're not like tied to doing just plumbing, all day every day. Um, so that's kind of where we're going. I don't really have I don't think it makes a lot of sense to like pick like a number, because it's like, what does it even mean?
Yeah.
I definitely would like to have a little bit more freedom. Like, I'm still in the grinding phase right now, where it's like, I start working early in the morning. I cap myself off at 8 p.m. But it's pretty much, I have a nice life. Like, I get to still play beach volleyball and cut out for a workout in the middle of the day every once in a while. But like, it's a lot of work. So I would like to be able to, step away from the business for like a couple weeks, at some point, and then, leverage it to pursue other opportunities in like real estate and stuff like that. But it's more about like providing things for more people than myself, I think.
I love that. What do you think is the difference in mindset between someone who is just like a one man show and maybe they like want to grow and accomplish the goals you just mentioned, but they're not getting anywhere, as opposed to you who's in that process and building momentum to get to where you want to go, where you have more freedom, you have the ability to dictate your outcomes, your life. Like what's the difference there?
It's I I know there's probably some structural differences with how I like maybe do go about my life potentially. It starts with taking care of yourself physically. I don't drink a lot, like at all almost. And I think it starts there. Like, are you drinking enough water during the day? Like little basic stuff. But like, dude, if you're every day going to McDonald's and poisoning yourself, it's probably going to have some sort of trickle down effect, right?
Yeah.
But then
We just lost our McDonald's sponsorship, man. Come on.
yeah, sorry,
No, you're good. You're good.
but
Here's a smaller one.
but it kind of starts there, and then you have to want something more than just for yourself. Like, you have to. There's what was that book called? It's called Give and Take, I think, where it's like talking about being givers, matchers, and takers. If you're like a taker, you're gonna have to change that, because like you're not gonna, you're gonna constantly be thinking about that people owe you stuff, and like that's like kind of like what my vision of like a typical contractor that's like always bagging on his customers and everyone's so cheap and this and that. You have to shift things and look at it a different way. And you just have to be more of like I don't know, like you just can't be so focused inward on yourself, because it's a tough industry as it is. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing. But you have to be curious about like what else is out there, and like really not think of yourself as like, I'm this expert, or I know how to do it, or when people tell you things, you need to like listen and internalize it and be coachable, you know, because that's how you get those new ideas and um, and then actually do the things that you hear about. You have to execute and not just talk about them. You got to get it done. And if it's just like one little thing a week, just do that one little thing. But you're gonna have to do something different than what you're doing currently. Otherwise, it'll just be the same.
I love that. You mentioned Pin Parrot earlier. What other software do you think is like crucial for home service businesses?
So pin parrot's good. I would not do that if you're early on.
Agreed.
The first thing that anyone needs to do is get a CRM system, and find one that you like. I like Jobber personally because it fits our how we operate really well. But there's other ones out there like House Call Pro, WorkEase. I know like the bigger companies they use Service Titan, but you have to dude, you have to stop typing up invoices on Word and then converting them to PDFs. That's the first thing you have to do. There's even like inexpensive cheap ones, but I would just, if you can afford it, stretch a little bit, get a CRM system. Like Jobber's nice because it has a lot of text automations and stuff if you pay for like the premium part of it, and it's like relatively speaking not that expensive. Um, but then after that, um, like I think the next door software that where they send us the leads, that's not even my software, it's somebody else's, but it work. I pay a couple $100 a month, and then they
What's
get
that
all these
called? Or
next
you
door
even in a
leads.
secret? Oh, next door leads. All right.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have
great.
to look into that.
But let's see. So Jobber, Chirp is really great. Like we've been having a lot of success with like drip campaigns. I find their interface can be challenging sometimes, but like overall the product is really good. But the CRM has to be the first thing. If someone is doesn't, sometimes I'll talk to contractors, then they're like telling me how like that they just still like write invoices out and stuff. I'm like, you're like robbing time from your family by doing that. Like it saves so much time. It's unbelievable. So, um, let's see what else. Trello boards are good. Like that's how we keep track of jobs. And there's like automations you can do within Trello. Zapier is really important for like making those automations happen. And just pay someone on Fiverr to do that stuff for you. Don't try and learn it. Even if a jobber is pretty easy, but like even if you're not like a tech person, you need help setting up, you can literally just pay somebody like $50 to, make you an expensive website or like, set up a couple automations, and it'll make all the, save you time. So, you got to spend a little bit but use other people's expertise.
Do you think you can use like something like Chirp when you're bowling on a budget? I don't really know how their pricing is structured. Like, is it like attainable for smaller mid-level companies?
Yeah, you probably need to have like 2 to 3 thousand people in your like database that you've like worked for till Chirp makes sense. Chirp is on the low end is like 350 a month,
Wow,
and
that's not bad.
so it's not bad, but you got to use it. Like
Yeah.
Java already has a texting function with it, but you can't send pictures through it. So that's how we first came into Chirp. Is I was like, oh, you can send pictures through Chirp. Well, that functionality isn't like the best through Chirp either. Like there's a lot of like failed messages because like generally speaking your pictures are going to be larger than a megabyte. But you need to have enough people where you can like send out drip campaigns and things like that. Like Jobber already has all these like automated follow-ups for like invoices and appointments and things like that. So like you know if you're small, I would just do that. Like just pay for the best version of Jobber, and then once you get more of a budget, then you can, and more people in your database, then you can do stuff like Chirp. Pin Parrot's really good too, but I would say like where we're at, I wouldn't do it any earlier than where we're at. So a couple years in the business, we're still less than like a million in revenue, but it's still it starts to make sense at this point. But if you're like just starting out, it's like, dude, you just pay for your thumbtack leads and try and make a website,
Yeah,
and then go from there.
perfect. And so we talked about people podcasts, what events should home service businesses be going to either like get information, meet people, and learn something new to grow their business?
Let's see. So Tommy Mello's event is pretty good. You can, um, but when you go to these things, it's really easy to get caught up in like some of the shiny objects or like some of the speakers and stuff. So like, I would tell people like, if you're gonna go to something like that, don't just start busting out your credit card for every single person. Still like be disciplined and like think about, because he literally had like a hypnotist at his last one, and like the guy was really good. It's not like he was bad or anything, but like this is this whole guy's job is to like, get you to do certain things, so like, and there's going to be a lot of vendors but I think it's really good because you can see what's out there, so I would probably say his is the best one because he has so many, it's large enough, Tom Reber's contractor fight. They're not doing events anymore. They did their last one this last year. That one was really good, but it's not as many vendors, not as many good vendors. But the speakers I felt like were a little bit more relatable, and they had like breakout sessions, whereas like Tommy Mello's is like a big, just, they just have just the speakers and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Other than that, um, you just got to see what's out there like locally, if you see tradespeople conventions or like they just had like a plumbing HVAC one up at the Del Mar Fairgrounds. It's just good to go and like connect with people. If you're a business, like you need to be going to at least one networking function a week, and you'll probably, like in my industry, you'll get a job out of it for sure. Hand out like 5 cards there's a duty has these things called like beers and deals, but they just have like a bunch of like people that are into real estate, go to something like that, force yourself to have some conversations, but that's the meat of where you're going to like build your business, is like these small events where you're getting in touch with people in your community and like, getting jobs out of it.
What's your one piece of advice for the table server, accountant, event builder, um, Instacart driving, delivering person who knows there's something more out there and wants to attain it, but doesn't know how yet?
Read a book, dude. you know, just like if just read a book, like I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then it snowballed into me starting Huge Handyman. So like, read a book, just I don't know, like turn the TV off for a minute, try and work on yourself, go for a run. I don't know, all that stuff is like super important. Don't get too frustrated. Your problems are going to get bigger. So like, I don't know, read a book.
I actually love that. Just read a book. Just pick up a
Yeah.
book and read it.
Yeah, just read it, dude. I don't even care if it's like fantasy. Just read it. Hopefully, maybe it's the Bible. Bible's great.
Yeah, that's a good one.
A lot of wisdom in there. They sold a lot of copies, but you could go to any of the other books. They're good too.
Awesome. So, Greg, where can people find more about you?
We have an Instagram. It's at Huge Handyman. Our website's hugehandymansd.com. I'm on TikTok. I don't know what my handle is, but it's probably Huge Handyman something. That's pretty much it. Or if you're in San Diego, hopefully you'll see one of our trucks driving around and you can flag us down, say what's up.
Awesome. Dude, thank you so much for taking the time. This was great.
Yeah, thanks, Will. It was fun.
Awesome.